Welcome to the Business Growth Spotlight, where we shine the light and talk with business leaders from all over the world who share their insights and expertise so we can all grow together. I'm your host, Heidi Schalk, and the co-founder and creator of the Spotlight to Scale Accelerator, where we help businesses drive revenue by making sure they're seen as the go-to expert and authority in their industry versus just another product or service. And today we are talking about leadership. So I am joined by Carole Robin, who is my guest today. Welcome, Carole, to the show with Leaders in Tech. I'm excited to have you.
Thank you so much, Heidi. I'm delighted to be here.
Absolutely. I'm delighted to have you, and thank you for your time. Can you kick us off with letting us know a little bit about you, your company, and your role that you play within it?
Sure. Well, I'm the co-founder of an organization called Leaders in Tech, which is a nonprofit that I co-founded in 2017. I guess that would make it 7 years ago, after a long career teaching at the Stanford Graduate School of Business. And essentially, it's the Carole Robin curriculum brought to high-tech CEOs and founders. Mostly, it started out in Silicon Valley. Now they come from all over the world. And it's a leadership development program. It's a platform for developing leaders. And it's also a platform to develop communities among CEO founders who often find themselves quite lonely in their path to bringing their own visions and missions and companies to the world. Even though we're a nonprofit, but we're a company.
Yeah.
And we have all the things that companies have. We have a product, we have marketing that we need, we have revenue that we have to break even, otherwise we go out of business. And so I'm happy to talk about any aspect of it that you'd like to know more about.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm excited to have you here. So can we talk a little bit about I want to talk about Leaders in Tech, but also you have a Carole Robin curriculum, which is very important. And I know behind the scenes, we talked about this AI product that you developed. So I really would love to learn more about that too. But I know that you talk a lot into like competencies, interpersonal competencies. What are interpersonal competencies and why are they so important?
Well, let's start with why they're important. So this curriculum is based on the most popular course at the Stanford Graduate School of Business for many, many decades. Most oversubscribed to, the course that all the students said was worth the whole price of tuition, which, as you might imagine, made me very popular with all my colleagues. And the reason it was so popular is that people do business with people.
Right.
They don't do business with ideas or machines or products or money or strategies. They do business with people. So learning to get the people part right turns out to be really important. The added Benny that students didn't realize they would get, but then ended up getting, was that once you learn to be interpersonally competent, it helps all of your relationships in your life, not just your business relationships. So I get predictably from MBA students 10 years later, emails and visits from them and calls that say, I just became a CEO, I owe it all to you. We'd predict that. But the ones that mean even more to me, Heidi, are the ones where students call me and say, I'm pretty sure your class just saved my marriage. Mm-hmm. I just reconciled my relationship with my brother, who I hadn't talked to in 3 years. Thank you for finally writing a book because he didn't go to the Stanford Business School. Interpersonal competence is a determinant of both professional and personal success. I mean, we know that from empirically and from a lot of research that we've done. So now, what is it? What are we even talking about when we say interpersonal competence? Well, essentially, it's the ability to create relationships that are at a minimum robust and functional. So if you think about relationships on a continuum, at one end of the continuum is contact and no connection. Those are your thousands of Facebook friends. Also at that end is dysfunction. I probably don't have to describe that. Most people know or have been or are in some relationship that might be categorized as dysfunctional. Along the continuum, at the very other end of the continuum is what we might call exceptional, which is why my co-author and I called the book building exceptional relationships. And I can come back and talk a little bit about that. But it turns out the goal here isn't to try to turn every relationship in your life into something exceptional. That would be impractical and unnecessary. But it turns out that once you develop the skills and competencies you need to get from one end of the continuum to the other, you've also developed the skills and competencies you need to get to at least robust and functional. And shouldn't that be a reasonable goal for us all to have, that all of our relationships, whether they're professional or personal, are robust and functional? So that consists of a relationship where you trust each other, where you're honest with each other, where you're invested in each other's growth, where you're known to each other, where you don't have to spin your image all the time, and where you can actually be real with each other. And now there's gradations of that, but somewhere between nobody knowing who the real you is and you being an open book to everybody on everything, there's a lot of in between. And so those are some of the characteristics of relationships that have moved along the continuum. We're known to each other, we're honest with each other, we raise and resolve conflict productively, as opposed to hide it or bury it or have big fights where we just, end up not friends at all or not in relationship at all. And of course, what I said before about being willing to invest in each other's growth.
So is this one of the reasons, like, why you had shared that your students have kind of named your course the touchy-feely course? So what is the reason behind that? And does it have to do with how you teach interpersonal competencies?
Yes. So first, I do have to make sure that folks know that this wasn't just uniquely my course, and I did not invent it. Even though I became known as the Queen of Touchy-Feely, I didn't invent it. If anybody invented it, my co-author of our book invented it. But I came to Stanford at a juncture when the course was already popular, but it really took off. And I think one of the reasons that my particular sections of it became so popular were because I was not a career academic. I'd had a lot of different careers and I'd run businesses. And so I was able to connect the dots for the students and say, here's how I wish I'd known this.
Right.
when I was running, a $50 million business. And now, why do they call it touchy-feely? It's kind of a double entendre. Touchy-feely, is usually considered the soft skills, which this is all about. But the emphasis in the course, there's a lot of emphasis in the course on feelings. So touchy-feely, emphasis on the feelings, not the touchy. And that's because emotions and feelings are the basis for stronger relationships, not ideas. When we connect up here, that's one way to connect. When we connect from here to here, that's a whole different way to connect. And so there's a lot of focus on accessing your feelings, speaking your feelings, using feelings to not only become better known. If I tell you I went ziplining, well, you learned something about me. That's a fact. If I tell you I went ziplining and I was exhilarated, you've learned something totally different about me.
That's true.
If I tell you I went ziplining and I was terrified, but I went because my whole family was going and I didn't want to be left out and I felt kind of coerced, which is the true story, you'd learn even more about me. So you see the difference between sticking with facts and adding feelings. Feelings are to communication, thoughts and feelings are like treble and bass in music. You need them both. They sound weird without each other. We've been socialized to leave feelings out of it, especially in business. And that's what makes the course continues to be taught there, even though I'm not there anymore. But that's all of what I brought to Leaders in Tech, which was the curriculum from Touchy-Feely, as well as from other courses that I taught, high performance leadership, leadership fellows. So there were a number of different courses that I developed at Stanford, and I have an amalgamation of that, which we deliver in our programs at Leaders in Tech. Let me
So,
pause there because you might have more questions.
yeah, no, this is great. So, what are some characteristics? We're talking about, interpersonal characteristics and competencies. So, what are the characteristics of strong relationships, and what are the skills or competencies associated with those characteristics?
So I've mentioned the characteristics to some extent. One characteristic is that I allow myself to be better known by you, and you allow yourself to be better known by me.
Mm.
That doesn't, so, and I use those words quite deliberately because it's not, I'm a complete open book. And the skill associated with that is disclosure and what we might call appropriate disclosure, appropriate authenticity. If I'm the VP of marketing and I get up in front of the troops and I say, that's the third month in a row we've lost share. I have no idea what's going on. I probably shouldn't be your VP of marketing. That might be, I'm feeling really insecure. That might be authentic and that might be disclosing, but that is not an appropriate authenticity. Context matters. If I get up in front of the troops and say nothing and say we're crushing it, that also results in us losing credibility. But
Mm.
if I get up and I say, so gang, it's probably no surprise. That's the third month in a row we've lost share. I wish I could stand here and tell you I know exactly what's wrong and exactly what we should do. I have some ideas. I've never needed, I bet you all have some ideas. I bet you have even better ideas than I do in some cases. I've never needed you more. Which is the leader of those three that you'd rather follow?
Three,
So
number three,
it's
yeah.
in
Sure.
service of being a more effective leader, becoming known and being more and being vulnerable, but appropriately vulnerable. So that's a skill. It's a characteristic and a skill. Another characteristic is that we're honest with each other. If you're doing something that is in some way harming our relationship or harming the team or harming the organization, and I don't say anything, I'm essentially colluding and saying it's fine for you to keep doing it.
Mm.
So being honest with each other and saying, hey, Heidi, you know, when you show up repeatedly late to meetings and then don't say a word and just as though you have been there from the beginning, I feel flummoxed. I don't know what to make of that. I also feel I feel disappointed. And I find myself getting worried about what this means about your level of commitment. By the way, that's how one delivers feedback, not you must not care, which some people think is feedback. So
Mm.
there's a big skill around giving feedback. It's central to the course, central to the book, central to the curriculum at Leaders in Tech. It involves feelings. When you do X, I feel, insert feeling word, as opposed to I feel that. Because when you say I feel that, it's going to be followed not by a feeling word. I feel that you don't care. I feel that you're not committed. I feel that this doesn't matter to you. None of those are feelings. And they're all attributions and motives that, I'm attributing to you. Unless you say I don't care, I don't know whether that's true or not. And all they're going to do is make you more defensive. So how do you deliver feedback in ways that do not make someone else defensive, but
Mm.
instead invite them into a problem-solving conversation? Central to the skills. Also, the skill of inquiry. How do you inquire what's going on for someone else without making them defensive or worried? Or how do you genuinely inquiry? The root of the word inquiry is quest, which is, I don't know what I'm going to find. I'm genuinely curious, which, by the way, you can't do if you've already judged and decided you know the answer. So inquiry is a skill, and it's one that's, again, central to the course, central to the book, central to the program at Leaders in Tech. It's something people need to learn how to do. So being honest with each other by giving each other better feedback in more productive ways also means that we don't avoid conflicts, but we deal with conflicts more productively. Because
Yeah.
there's a way to do that that builds relationship. If I really care about you and you're doing something that's harming you, me, us, the company, the team, and isn't it a caring thing to tell you as opposed to not? But most people have mental models and beliefs and assumptions about based on reality because they've all stepped on piles of doo-doo when they tried to give feedback that didn't go so well. And that, doesn't always serve them. But of course, they need a new skill set in order update their mental model.
Hmm. Yeah, I was talking with somebody, another guest the other day, and we were talking about the feedback, and I was sharing how important it is that, for you to have that skill inside of your business, both as a leader and as a supporter inside the business, right? So if you are on board with your company's mission and vision and you're all excited and you want to see the company grow, you have to be open to both giving and feedback and also properly and also receiving feedback without taking it
Absolutely.
personally. And that's highly important, extremely important. And I think something that's very overlooked when it comes to successful growth of a company. So I love that you went so deep into that and talked about that, because I think that is a big takeaway and gold nugget that our listeners who are either starting a business or you're in the growth process and you're scaling, it's something that you need to always be revisiting. Are we current with this? Are we aware, right? Because we could talk about it, we could train on it, we can learn it, and then 6 months, a year goes by, and all of a sudden it's not top of mind or heightened, and all of a sudden we're having some breakdowns is the best word I can think
Right.
of
It,
inside of our system, and we don't know what they're coming from, and it could just be all related to that.
in fact, Heidi, I think one of the most important things any leader can do is pay attention to building a culture of feedback.
Mm.
It's a deliberate, intentional act for a leader to plant a stake and say, this is going to be a culture where we're going to tell each other the truth. And we're going to tell each other the truth in service of both succeeding as a company and succeeding as individuals and in service of our relationships. Most people think those are mutually exclusive, and they're not. They actually are very complementary, but most people don't know how to do it well.
Yeah. And speaking in truth, giving feedback in truth, because we're going to be honest with each other, also comes with knowing how to deliver that feedback. We don't do it out of,
Absolutely.
a way of criticizing and one-upping someone. We do it in a way with love and genuine, like we're on a mission for the same goal, and we want to reach this goal together. Yeah, I think that's so true, and I love that you're talking about it. So thank you.
Yeah, and there's a specific formula. I'm not going to get into it, but there's a rigor and a discipline to it. It'll take too long to describe it. But chapter 7 in the book, if you do nothing else, check out the book and read chapter 7. Has the core skill so that what results from the feedback you give is much more likely to be a willingness, an invitation to move into problem solving, rather than somebody else feeling in some way put down or defensive or angry.
Yes. So can you share with us, we're going to dive more in, but we're talking about the book a lot. So can you share the name of the book and where we can find it?
Sure, the book is called Connect, Building Exceptional Relationships with Family, Friends, and Colleagues.
Perfect.
It's available if you go to our website, connectandrelate.com, there are links to lots of booksellers. It's available obviously as a hardcover. It's also available as an Audible and as a Kindle.
Beautiful. So definitely go check out that. It's called Connect, Building Exceptional Relationships with Family, Friends, and Colleagues. But if you look up Carole Robin with Connect, you'll find it. And again, you can go to her website to grab it, which is connectandrelate.com, and you can see everywhere that it's sold. So if you have a preference on your favorite place, you can go buy it there. So can you tell us more about, before we get there, Carole, can you share what are some of the biggest mistakes that leaders make when trying to build trust and strong relationships in their organizations? And I know one of them we probably talked about, which is managing feedback.
Yeah. So, one of the things that people don't often recognize is that trust is built incrementally. We don't go from 0, I don't trust you, to 100, I trust everything about you in 3.2 seconds. So, in fact, trust is built by making small agreements and keeping them. So
Mm.
if we start out with an initial, let's say we're in some neutral place. I don't know whether to trust you or not. You and I make a small agreement. You keep your end of it. I keep my end of it. Now I feel more comfortable making a bigger agreement with you. And now if you keep that, then I'm more comfortable making an even bigger agreement and commitment. So think about it as a spiral where each step in the spiral, which is concentric, creates a bigger and bigger agreement with more and more trust involved in making it. And when kept, builds even more trust. And so that's the nature of how trust gets built. Now, what the other thing that's important to remember about trust is once we're way out here in the spiral and we've made a big agreement and commitment, and you break that, we don't just come back to the next place, the next prior place where we were. We come whipping all the way back on the spiral, all the way back to the beginning and maybe even negative territory. So it gets built incrementally and it gets lost very fast the farther out you've gotten in the spiral.
Mm. Okay.
So
Yeah,
that's
makes
one
sense.
way to think about it.
Right. And that works with both relationships in business, whether it's your personal relationships at home or your relationships inside of your work environment. So,
That's exactly
yep,
right.
that's why it's
And
so,
no, go ahead. Why
that's
it's
why
so
you have your students it's from Stanford telling you, you saved my marriage, your teachings have saved my
exactly.
marriage. I learned so much. I'm building better relationships inside of my life, and they're happier all around because this overlaps. It goes into every
Right,
area of our lives. Yes.
right. And this subject of trust is very related to the disclosure part that I was talking about earlier with regard to us allowing ourselves to be better known by each other. So I have to trust that whatever I tell you, you're not going to use against me. So again, I'll make a small disclosure. I'll see what you do with it. I'll see whether you reciprocate with a small disclosure. If you do, then maybe I'll make a bigger disclosure. And in doing that, we're also building trust. And we use a model that might be helpful for your listeners. I guess they're all listening or watching to know, which is called the 15%. So if you think about it, when it comes to disclosure and feedback, we all have a comfort zone. Think of a circle, comfort zone. I don't think twice about saying anything in that circle. Concentrically, outside that, there's another circle, which we will call the danger zone. In a million years, I'd never say that to you. But in the middle, between those two circles, is a circle called the learning zone. So you have to step outside your comfort zone in order to learn something and in order to deepen a relationship. But you got to stay inside your danger zone because otherwise you kind of freak yourself out or the other person or both of you. So when we used to talk about this, the students used to say, but God, the minute I step outside my comfort zone, how do I know I'm not in my danger zone? How do I know I'm in my learning zone? So we came up with what we call the 15% rule. Step a little bit outside your comfort zone. You'll know, you'll feel it. You'll feel it in your body. And so I'll take a little risk. I'll see how you respond. Maybe you'll take a little risk back. Maybe we both like the way that went. And now we'll take another little risk. And so we will grow and deepen our relationship and become more and more honest with each other and build a trust between us incrementally, little bit at a time, because our comfort zone keeps getting redrawn a little bigger every time we engage that way.
What was the inspiration between the launch not between what was the inspiration for launching Leaders in Tech, and how has it helped transform leadership in the industry?
Well, in 2017, I had been at Stanford almost 20 years. I was not a career academic, as I said earlier, but I loved my students. I loved what I taught. I believe, Heidi, I was put on the planet to help people learn how to connect with each other, and especially how to connect across differences, because it's easy to connect with people who think exactly the way you do, see the world exactly the way you do, have exactly the same life experiences you do. Life doesn't work that way. So I was, I was living my mission in life, and I just had had enough of the BS of academic administration and the baggage that came with teaching. Loved the students, loved the subject matter, found it enormously gratifying and meaningful, but decided I just couldn't stay one more year because it was just too difficult. And And then I found myself at this juncture. I was ready to retire from Stanford. I'd been there long enough to retire. I'd earned retirement, but I was not ready to retire by any means. And so my co-founder had been chasing me, literally, for 10 years. I had been his executive coach. He had been the CEO and founder of Flickster that bought Rotten Tomatoes, that had a big exit to Warner Brothers. And he had come to me when he had his big exit 10 years before in 2007 and said, Carole, why don't you leave Stanford? Why don't we start, an organization in Silicon Valley? Why don't we bring the Carole Robin curriculum to Silicon Valley? And I said, oh, thank you, Joe. I'm really flattered, but no, I'm not leaving Stanford. Love my students. And every 6 months, Heidi, he came to me with the same request. And in 2017, when he showed up at my doorstep again, I said, well, Joe, I guess it's time. I guess we're going to do this. And so we hung our shingle. And I said, okay, sure, but why would anybody come to our program? Why would anybody come to Leaders in Tech? Stanford Exec Ed offers something like this. There's a bunch of Exec Ed leadership programs out there that have been around a long time. Why would anybody come to Leaders in Tech? And, he said, look, the course and you have a reputation in the Valley, and I think we can write it. I didn't believe it. I was like, nobody knows who I am. He was
Right.
like, actually, Carole, I think there really are people out there who, your
Yeah.
students talk to others. We decided to send, I don't know, a couple dozen emails to the venture capitalists that we knew, and, and say, so we're launching this program. If you know a CEO founder that you think might want to go through it and might want to learn this, nominate them for Leaders in Tech. And we got 370 nominations the first 2 weeks.
That's amazing.
And I had said, well, we'll start with 12. So, I mean, I really honestly, Heidi, did not think. I was stunned. And then the idea was that if you were nominated, then we reached out to you and we invited you to apply. If you were a CEO leader, founder of a pre-IPO company, by the way, and or leader, because our mission was to make sure that the future Facebooks and Googles and Microsofts of the world had very different cultures than the current ones.
Mm.
And we figured we'd start with all the companies that would someday maybe become that,
Right.
and their leaders and their CEOs. So at that point, I said, okay, so we got a bunch of nominations, but who knows how many applications we'll get. Well, we got 170 applications and another 100 who said, I can't do it at this time, but can I apply next year? At that point, I realized we had what we call in the business product market fit. And we were off. And we launched our first cohort in February of 2018 of 24 CEO founders. This fall, we will be launching our 9th cohort of, this time we've grown from 24 to 36 to 72 per cohort.
Wow.
And we'll have 72 fellows coming in this fall. And beyond that, and this is what happens in most startups, it turns out there are other potential products. So this is a 1-year fellowship program that these CEO founders, go through. And so then we discovered that many of them came to us and said, what about my people? I want them to learn all this too. So initially we had 4-day retreats for people who were direct reports of the CEO and founder so that their team would be immersed in this and also learn. I mean, the 4-day retreats are like touchy-feely on steroids.
Yeah.
Quarter-long class. Then we had venture capitalists whose CEO founders were raving about this, who said, what about us? So then we started a 4-day retreat for venture capitalists. Then we had CEO founders who said, but I want my entire company to know this. So then we started corporate programs where we come in and, do a version for the entire company, 50 people. So it's grown beyond my wildest dreams.
That's amazing. I'm so happy for you and excited for all of you. So can you share with us, let's talk about growth since you've seen the growth happen firsthand, leaders in tech. And I know you were an academic, but you were in the academia space. What's were some of the biggest challenges that you saw? Because you had the excitement of people wanted it. You had over
Yeah.
350 yeses or responses for more information and to move forward. But what were some of the challenges that you all have experienced, and how did you overcome them in while you as you over the years?
Well, let me talk first kind of at a higher level because in addition to being a startup founder myself, I've coached CEO founders for many, many years. So some of the biggest mistakes, the first one is scaling too fast at the expense of the quality of your product. Um, or scaling too fast at the expense of your people and burning them out and suddenly finding yourself with lots of demand but no ability to actually deliver on it.
Right.
That's even worse. Um, Another common mistake I think that a lot of leaders make and founders make is in choosing the right co-founder.
Mhm.
So if you're going to have a co-founder, you better be on the same page, not only with regard to what you're trying to build and why, i.e. mission, vision, values, but also how you're going to get there. Because I think the mistake a lot of co-founders make is that figure, hey, we're totally aligned on, we're super passionate, we're totally aligned on what we're building and why. And then they fail to actually talk about, do we see the same road to get there? And they don't have that conversation until they've made a commitment. And then they have a heck of a problem when they have vastly different views on how to get there. So I'd say that those are the biggest mistakes. The other mistake, I think, especially when it comes to startups, that founders and leaders make is startups attract a certain kind of person. They attract risk takers. They attract people who want to work hard, play hard, make it big, and which is great. And sometimes, and this has been my own experience in my own startup. Our team is so passionate about what we're doing and so committed to our mission that sometimes they don't set good boundaries for themselves and they burn themselves out.
Mhm.
And if I was the kind of leader where I just took and took and took and didn't say, you know what, Heidi, you've been giving an awful lot. You need to take a weekend off, or you need to go spend some time with your husband. Or as a leader, it's easy to fall into this mode of, well, this person just has no limit to how much they're willing to give. And so I'm going to take it until, by the way, they burn out and then they got nothing to give.
Right. Right.
So I'd say that's a big mistake a lot of leaders make. And the last one, and this now relates back and quite directly to the reason that David and I wrote the book, is that the way a leader shows up has a lot to do with the culture they build.
Hmm.
They become a referent figure. So people see them and say, "Oh, I want to be more like that. I want to show up in the world more." And that's a reason that I want to follow that person. In addition to their mission and their vision and the work I get to do. It's like I work for somebody that I admire and respect and really want to learn to be more like. Well, then you better show up as a person that other people
Right.
might want to be more like.
Right.
And that's back to all the skills that I was talking about earlier.
So many good things that you just shared. So thank you for all of that. And I do want to go back to what you shared about the co-founder of Leaders in Tech, who basically was, kept asking you for 10 years, let's do this. Are you ready to go? Let's do this. And that just reminds me of the fortunes in the follow-up. No matter what you want, when you have an eye on the prize and an eye on your goal, and you're that passionate about your goal and your vision, you're not going to let any no's or anyone or anything stopping you in getting there. And that comes with just asking over and over and over again. And
Right.
a no
And
doesn't
also,
mean necessarily doesn't mean a
no
no. It
doesn't
could just
necessarily mean
mean
no
not right
forever.
now. Right.
Exactly. And it also means seizing other opportunities that fit. So we had a third co-founder who actually was the person who established Leaders in Tech. And once she established Leaders in Tech as an entity and a board, she was like, okay, well now I need to figure out what Leaders in Tech is going to do. And she had heard about Joe through the grapevine, who had had a prior venture that was along these lines. And then the two of them joined forces and came to me, having raised a bunch of money. And that's how they got me as the third co-founder.
Yeah.
So the story is even more complicated than might
Right.
appear.
Right. But again, it's in the follow-up, right? Just asking, and when the time is
And
right,
it's
the fit
seizing
is there and the
opportunity.
need is there, and there's just everything aligns. But sometimes it's multiple times you have to keep asking. Um, and I love that because it's really important no matter what business you're in, when it comes to achieving your goals, it's not going to be an automatic yes the majority of the time. You're going to hear more no's and you're going to hear more yeses to get that to that success. So Carole,
Absolutely.
how can people reach out to you and connect with you?
So I'm on LinkedIn, Carole Robin. Uh, I think it says Carole Robin PhD. There's a lot of Carole Robins, but um, we can maybe send the link to my
Yes, we
LinkedIn
will.
profile. Now, if you do reach out to me on LinkedIn, please don't reach out to me to sell me something.
Mm.
Happy to, you can send me a message and connect with me, or you can just follow me, but please, I beg of you, do not try to sell me anything. Um, the other thing people can do is if they're interested in learning more about Connect, about Leaders in Tech, they can go to the Leaders in Tech website, leadersintech.org. There you can learn about the programs, and you can also reach me through Leaders in Tech. Carole at leadersintech.org is my email there. Um,
Perfect. Perfect.
uh,
We're going to have all of Carol's information in the show notes, so you can grab it there. And her name is spelled with an E. So it's Carole with an E, Carole, Robin, which might make it a little easier. I'm sure there's still multiple Carole Robins out there, but with the E, it might make it
yes.
easier. But again, we
And,
will have
and
her.
and not only that, Robin, no one B, one N, like a single bird, not two
Yeah.
B's, not an S, Robin.
Robin, like the bird. Yes. So Carole with an E, Robin, like the bird.
Exactly.
And you can go to her website, which we will also have in the show notes, but that is connectandrelate.com, also leadersintech.com. Correct,
No,
Carole? No,
leadersintech.org.
leadersintech.org. It is a nonprofit. Leadersintech.org, and we'll have all of the information that we have from Carole inside of there. So reach out to her, connect with her, and go grab the book. It's called Connect, right? How
Yeah.
easy is that? So make sure you go grab the book, and you can get that information on where you can purchase it in multiple locations at connectandrelate.com. Carole, thank you so much for being here with me today. Is there anything that you'd like to share before we wrap up that I didn't get to ask you or we didn't touch on?
Yeah, one thing that I'd like your listeners to know that at the connectandrelate.com website, there is a drop-down menu. I think it's called resources or activities or something like that. I never remember what it's called. But essentially, there's a free downloadable self-assessment that you can download for yourself, which has a list of essentially all the interpersonal competencies, many of which we didn't talk about. We talked about the key ones. And one thing you can do is you can self-assess. How good am I at this anyway? The
Yeah.
other thing you can do is run it, print it out, give it to 3 or 4 people in your life, compare how you see yourself to how others see you, and then decide whether there's a gap and you should invest a little bit in becoming a little bit more interpersonally competent. Free, downloadable PDF self-assessment. It also has a start your own learning group if you don't want to do anything formal, but you want to get 4 or 5 people together, each buy a book, do your own learning group. The book has a book is like taking the course one chapter at a time. At the end of each chapter, there are things to go do and try based on what you just read. And the book, by the way, is not an academic book. The lessons are learned through the stories of 5 relationships: a man and a woman who work together, a married couple, a father and daughter, 2 girlfriends who've been friends for a long, long time, and 2 guys who've become recent friends. And so it's meant to be readable, accessible, not dry academic theory.
Yeah. Perfect. Thank you for sharing that. And so for you listening, make sure you connect with Carole. Make sure if you're watching Carole and I on YouTube, please hit the subscribe button, so you can make sure that you're getting notified when our amazing guests are coming on here. And leave Carole a note below in the comments. If you're listening to us on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, any of your favorite podcast platforms, you can leave a review. We ask that you do. It helps us share the information that Carole is, her wisdom, and her information that she's sharing with more people, and it allows us to impact more people with the guests that we're bringing on this show. Again, this podcast is to serve you in your business growth and shine the spotlight on the guests that we have who are sharing their expertise to help you grow. And if you are struggling with your visibility, if you are feeling like you're challenged on getting in front of your ideal customers and clients, and you're going, Heidi, I'm trying all the things and it doesn't seem like I'm gaining some traction, then go to spotlight2scale.com/blueprint, and go grab your Spotlight to Scale visibility blueprint. It's free. Follow it and get going there. Thank you, Carole, so much for joining me today. It's been such a pleasure talking with you. I'm very grateful for
Likewise.
your time.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you also for listening to Carole and I today on the Business Growth Spotlight podcast. We will see you next time. Have an amazing day.